have experienced where, the decisions, if we go to women's events, for example, will be made in the bar over drinks by the guys, and we'll find out the next day when we come in. So thank you for coming and supporting the women's track today. I am Rachel Bondi, and I am the former chief of mobile innovation at Creative Artists Agency. And right now I'm at IBM Consulting Services, which I am, at least for now, until they hear the introduction. We are on live broadcast. So I also have a nonprofit called Men Matter, as in men mattering to women in their decisions and how they are supportive or empowering to women. And I've had that organization since 2003. The statistics in this industry, as well as others, are pretty compelling. So over 85% of board members, 98% of CEOs are men. Most decisions for the politics, news editing positions, professorships in college, all still the majority men. And as we may or may not know, specifically in technology, IT representation has gone from 37% women in the late 90s to now a 24% statistic. So, while we were expecting improvements, things have actually gone backward in some sense for women in technology. So I wanted to commend everyone here for sticking with this and also inviting others to participate in order to represent more women in technology in general. So that's my introduction. You won't be hearing much more from me other than questions to our panel today. And my first question for the panel is for them to introduce themselves and to tell something maybe interesting that we all don't know about you, or that would be at least a curiosity, so the room can get to know you.
Should we start down here? Oh. Sure, no problem. My name is Holly Liu, and I'm a co-founder of a gaming company called Kabam. For those who haven't heard of that, we make games. Well, we started out in 2006 making games on Facebook, and then we moved onto the mobile phone. We make games behind some of the biggest Hollywood IPs, such as Fast and Furious 6, as well as The Hobbit. Currently, I helped founded the company. Currently, I'm chief of staff, but two interesting bits about one about the company and one about myself is for us at the company, we just raised our last round that set us at $1 billion valuation, which is pretty rare. It's called the Unicorn Club. Yeah. And then the second one is my background is actually in product design. So I got to help design one of our leading franchises called Kingdoms of Camelot. But now I oversee culture and HR at our company.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rachel Payne. I'm CEO and co-founder of a media tech startup called Fem Inc. Fem Inc. has created a video discovery platform that is easily embedded into any website, content network, or app to drive a curated playlist of videos that are contextualized for what the user is doing in that moment and anticipating what their needs are, and serves those needs through video. We work with a wide variety of partners, a very big range of content creators from major publishers to studios. We are about 2 years old. We have a milestone, but it's much smaller.
It's got to start
Not
somewhere.
$1 billion valuation.
Start somewhere.
We just closed our venture capital round, so we're really excited. We joined a new club. Doing that. Yes, it's called the 3% Club, which is that 3% of all that all goes to female-led ventures. And by the way, just as an interesting statistic, that's actually less than half of where it was when I started my first company, where 7% of venture capital went to female-led ventures. So again, trending in the wrong direction. And if you think about the odds of a female tech founder raising venture capital, it's actually 0.002%. So that kind of provides a sobering context, I think, for the conversation today, which is the impossible odds that often women are dealing with in tech. Keeping in mind, of course, that women are starting businesses at 2 times the rate of men. So it isn't that there's a shortage of female-led ventures. I would say, however, there is a shortage of female tech ventures, and that's where I'd love to see more participation. Thanks.
I'm Jessica Berlinski, and I co-founded a company called If You Can with the founder of Electronic Arts, Trip Hawkins. And the company launched last February the first social and emotional learning game as the #1 kids app and #1 education app on iTunes. I've just recently taken on the position of Chief Impact Officer at another social and emotional learning game company, and there are not many. It's certainly a unique niche. But this new company actually has something very, very special in the space, which is evidence-based behind what they do. I don't know how many folks out there are kind of up to date in the game space or the learning games space, but getting data that those games actually work is a really big deal. And so this new company actually has been working on that under wraps for many, many years and is funded by the Department of Education. So, and also just to provide a little bit of context, and I suppose this can dovetail into what's interesting about me, because this is really my driver for what I do, and that is the domain, the mission of social and emotional learning. That's kind of a mouthful and it sounds a little edgy speaky, but what that means, and it's really what I care about, scaling, which is why I'm doing it with technology, because that's a wonderful tool to get those skills to a lot of people. But essentially what social and emotional learning is, I like to break it into 3 parts. One is the self. So how do I manage my emotions? How do kids manage frustration and stress and anxiety? Self-efficacy, we hear that a lot. And so are kids confident today in what they're doing? And then others, how are kids collaborating? How are kids perspective taking? In the 21st century, that's really important. We're interconnected, we're a digitized society. At the click of a button, we're connecting with kids all over the world. So that's part of the skill set. And the third piece is decision making. So how are we teaching kids how to make ethical and responsible decisions? So that's the kind of skill set that these games teach. And what I really care about as a person, you know, and as a whole human, not just a tech entrepreneur or a professional.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lee Collier. How are you guys? I am an entrepreneur and have a background in TV development. I worked in research for years and worked at Warner Brothers, developing shows and content like TMZ, and oversaw that property. Worked at CBS, my colleague here and partner at my current company, B Booth. We have a talent discovery platform. Our CEO had an idea as he was watching American Idol and said, you know, there are all of these people that are they're uprooting their lives, they're moving, they're traveling, they're spending all of this money to go and audition for something like American Idol. And what is anyone doing for these people? They're standing out there in the line. You have this captive audience. What if they wanted a copy of their audition? Would they spend $5, $10, $20? I mean, you've spent thousands. So he said, I want to have an audition booth so these people can at least have a copy of it. And that's really the root of how our company started and came about, is giving people an opportunity to take a piece of something with them. You know, you're spending all of this effort. So he created this booth. We have an audition booth. And from that booth, we're placing them in malls across the country. And really what, you know, credit to Aaron, you know, said, we're bringing Hollywood to your hometown. You don't have to go to Hollywood. It's actually going to come to you. And we have a singing competition show that we sold that will allow people to do just that, you know. And so in the booth, you can sing, you can perform comedy, you can do any number of things, but it's really a way for, you know, people that don't have access to have the ability to be seen, be heard, be discovered in some way. And our news is we raised our funding and we're going public this week. So each of you can buy shares. Please do.
Well, We'll be selling them in the lobby. So I actually had several different questions for the ladies here, and trying not to make it too, I guess, presumptuous regarding the experience of being female. I want to lead it into a discussion around the interaction of both genders, and then kind of see where that goes from here. So my first question is, what are some of the biggest disruptions to your own lifestyle? And how have your innovations impacted you or people that you know personally? So that's your innovations and the disruption to your own life with career or technology. Oh no, anyone could take it. We can go on a line.
Sure. All right, I'll start again. So I think since this is talking about the entrepreneurial lifestyle, when you decide to be an entrepreneur, and I think most of the women can speak to it, it's not only a very personal experience, but it's a very time-consuming and energy-consuming experience. The highs are very high and the lows are very low. And once you decide to do that, that will completely disrupt your lifestyle. You will be married to your co-founders if you have them, and you will have this thing that is like a baby, but you guys aren't married. So it's not the most glamorous in the beginning. But that's what makes the success so much sweeter. Like even getting to that milestone is incredibly amazing, like raising money. And then hopefully we can all get to public. It just starts with the first milestone. So in terms of just even starting and going out and doing that is a huge lifestyle disruption. And I think some of the innovations kind of around that is really what your end product is. That's as Jessica, you were speaking to how much you love it. You can tell it's just the passion, and you wouldn't ever do what you are about to do if you were not extremely passionate about it. Is that passion is going to get you through the really, really shitty times. Sorry, it's like really crappy times, because you're going to hit some really, really horrible times. But on the lighter note, it's probably one of the most rewarding experiences to be able to go after something that you're extremely passionate about, and you're going to be living with honestly no regrets. So I'll let you guys speak some more to it.
That really encapsulates a lot of my experience as well of being an entrepreneur. I like to describe being a female entrepreneur as the hardest work you'll ever love. And it's great to know when you can't sleep at night because you have an idea that's burning and you just can't stop thinking about it, that's the time to really go out and launch your business. I think it's really important to go in, as Holly said, sort of with an honest understanding of what it will require. It's the most high volatility career you could ever imagine. And I like to call it these white knuckle moments where you're like, wow, this is going really fast. I'm not exactly sure where it's headed, but I'm steering this ship. And especially if you're the CEO, you're the one in command, and you need to steer the whole ship, and you need to help provide that inspiration and vision and everything else. I also like to think of it not so much as disruptive, but actually transformative, and the way that technology is transformative in our lives. So yes, I work insane hours. I really don't even keep track anymore because why bother? But what I would also say is, because we can accommodate lifestyle requirements in ways that weren't possible before. So we're an all-female tech founding team, and my two female co-founders are both mothers. And mothers of young children. One of them is a mother of 2 young children. Now, in the old world, that would be impossible. There's no way that person could be a co-founder of a tech startup because the hours are too demanding. Actually, what's too demanding is if you have really rigid work style requirements. And if you have flexibility through, telecommunications and the ability to video conference, suddenly these requirements are kind of meaningless. As long as you can create seamless communication and you ensure that you have that strong fabric of who you are as a company, there are a number of ways you can accommodate great talent. And I want the best talent. And sometimes that talent is family. They have families, and it could be a male or a female. It doesn't really matter. But the ability to accommodate families in the modern workforce is also what I think would be a key differentiator for an entrepreneur to be able to attract the best talent. So we're not just female friendly. We're like family. I'm sorry. We're not just family friendly. We're pro-family at Femme Inc. And we really believe in helping create an environment that embraces that. So I think that's been really transformative. And then in terms of our technology, one of the things I love is that we work with publishers like Inc. Magazine. And if you're an entrepreneur, you can never learn enough, right? Even if it's not your first go around. And so there are many, many times when I'm using my own product on Inc. Magazine, watching videos, and I'm like, wow, that was the best video. And it's completely relevant for what I'm working on as an entrepreneur in that moment. So that's kind of fun.
This is an interesting question. As I'm like reflecting on both of your answers, I'm like, what has been, some of the more salient and disruptive changes in my life? And I'm going to give good and bad here, because I think that's really important. To say like living the life, like that's kind of, that's debatable.
Feels like a tampon commercial. Like,
well, we did it. It's. I don't feel like I'm living the life often.
Yeah, those are the people out on the boat right now. Right?
So I'll be, very real. For me, I ran nonprofits for many, many years in the education space. And when Trip Hawkins asked me to co-found this new company with him, it catapulted, my career in many ways. And it was also a very innovative product. I mean, what we were doing was taking, a video game by the guy who did Madden football and teaching social and emotional skills with this, which is a new skill set, which is getting a lot of traction now, and a lot of, there's a lot of focus on that in the K-12 space, and even slowly into the parent space. And so, it was certainly exciting. It was very exciting to suddenly be in kind of a strata where there was a lot of press around what we were doing. And, I convened leaders, I was able to, I guess, if I look at what I did because of where I now was, I really felt like it was my responsibility to leverage that. And say, okay, so how can I really make change because I'm now at a level where I have more power to do so. And so one of the ways in which, just as one example, building awareness was a big deal for this. It's a new space. And so I convened leaders across sectors, so leaders from the government, leaders from tech, leaders from entertainment, to come together and do kind of a big work session at Stanford to look at, okay, how can we, together leverage our spheres of influence to build awareness for this, because we care about it. So that's, I think, I was able to do a lot more. On the negative side, I also, our game was very late. Our game was about 8 months late. And ultimately, Trip decided to let go of my role in that company was chief learning officer. And he decided to completely kind of deprioritize the education focus and focus more on sales for financial reasons largely. But I mean, for me, that was like, it was like a divorce. Like I literally felt like someone had pulled my baby away from me. It was far more shattering, I think, to me than just a job that I didn't feel like this was my, I created this, So the plus and the exciting part of it, and also just it felt literally traumatic when that happened to me. So so there's a full circle answer.
Disruption?
Yes, disruption.
Well, I mean, look, I think, we use that word so much, and it's like, what does it really mean? It's something different. Uber's a disruption because it's changed the way we, take taxis, but not only take taxis. But in order, for those guys to create that business, there were other people who had the idea before. There's a friend of mine who was telling me the story who has this really successful tech company, and his is Beyond. And he had the same idea for Uber 5 years ago. And everyone said, you'll never get past the taxi commission. You'll never do it. You'll never do it. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I will. And so it took someone to say, no, I'm going to fight them. And no, gives you a roadmap. You get no. And it's not just having a great idea, because, everyone in this room has 1,000 great ideas. We all do. It's the conviction and, belief, and also building a team of people around you that believe in the same thing. We started in a horrendous place in the Valley that's called Sun Valley. It's, we didn't even have an office, and then we moved over finally to like a little rental space. And there were 4 of us about ready to kill each other in one room, still occasionally, but, so you have to believe that you're going to get somewhere, and that when you're selling shows, or when you're getting your product out there, or people are, looking at your technology and they're saying, well, I can't do it. No, you have to do it. You have to do it. And so a lot of it is the belief and the intention that you put out there. So the disruption really comes from, the knowledge that, you have the ability to shift things. And there's no one good reason. So a friend of mine gave me really good advice. He said, always ask why. Why? Ask why. If something is that way, and I think it goes back even to, the Uber of, why is a taxi commission? So asking that question allows you to think about the other possibilities and allow for that disruption.
I wanted to add to that. I think it's totally true. Like, the team that you assemble needs to believe in a common dream, because that's what will get you through the hard times. And endurance is often an under-recognized and highly critical factor. Like, your ability to endure is really important. And so while we may not be living the life, I think we are living the dream. And that I feel every day.
Yeah. No, I also, just piggybacking on that, I think there's research that supports that, and I'm paraphrasing this very poorly, but that, highly successful people actually have an unrealistic optimism. Like, it's not based in reality. Like, it is higher than, it's like a fantasy level of optimism. But I think that you need that. You need to believe that you can do something that other people have not.
Why else would you fly to the moon? Like, you don't wake up and everyone's saying, no, you can't do that. What, are you crazy? But that's the kind of, mentality that allows you to do that.
And actually, one of our core values is do something impossible every day. Because it really feels like it.
I also think, just to kind of temper some of that, is that at our company, we talk a lot about conviction and humility, because you do have to have that conviction, but you're going to learn a lot of stuff along the way. You're going to fail. And it's part of that asking why. That comes from a place of humility of like, well, why did this happen? What went wrong? Learning from your failures is something that I think is going to be incredibly important, because it's really going to be how fast can you learn when you're starting out, and even now as we kind of get bigger. So I think definitely that learning piece of things is incredibly, incredibly important. And the endurance, I think people call it grit. How much grit can you just kind of hold on to?
That's actually a social and emotional learning skill.
Grit.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, it really is. Like, that's what our game teaches, and which is so important, not just for people in the workforce, but kids, when
the ability to bounce back and not quit. Right?
Exactly.
Went to impact things more locally or globally, and did your intent have anything to do with what actually happened? Go ahead. We could switch sides.
We will. I mean, what we're doing, we'll definitely roll out internationally. For us, it's more of it's a personal connection, because we first put out one of our audition booths, which are the size of, they're like a size of a kiosk, an eyeglass kiosk, but it looks like something, Apple would have built. It's very shiny. You can, go in, perform. And we put them out in Ontario, California, in this mall, and people just happened upon it. And there's a really personal connection. There was one girl who went in, and on our website, you can see it's just one random day at the mall. And this young girl had never performed. She was adopted, and she always was singing, but it was her first time performing in front of a crowd. She came out with 100 people applauding her, and she melted. You know, it was a real moment for her. You know, so it's one person, you know, that we touch at a time. So whether or not you make it onto a singing competition show or you win $1 million or any of that, it's taking it a little bit step back to a more personal level of giving someone their moment to shine. You know, and I think that can happen, you know, at a very local basis, and it could also happen on a very global scale.
You know, in terms of my work, I think my intention was always the country, like the national, like how can we really not just change educational priorities to, you know, start to teach kids things like empathy and grit and perseverance, right? And certainly not at the local level, but I think I also feel very strongly that culturally we have to change if the education system is going to change. And one of the things that excited me about a consumer product is that, you know, educators are constantly trying to change education. It's in disarray, but they're just talking to educators largely. Like they're not, like educators are really bad marketers, like really bad. I mean, when have you, like, give me an example of a good educator and marketer? There are very few. And so it was exciting for me to say, hey, maybe we can change educational priorities, cultural priorities, because we now can dialogue with like an entire consumer market, and that's way bigger. So that was very exciting for me. And I think it remains to be seen, you know, I think it remains to be seen, you know, how much the whole field, I think, is going to be impacted by learning games. I just wrote a piece for Forbes actually about this, which was about the marketplace for social and emotional learning games. So yeah, I think it's more to be revealed.
So when we started FemInc, we started with a mission to promote video content that resonates and represents diverse audience needs and voices. And diversity is a really key aspect of this, because there's been a preponderance of media that overly represents certain demographic groups and underrepresents others, women and minorities being the key examples, and particularly women above a certain age. And we also think about the individual learning journey and what does a person really need when they're looking for content. And it might sound like we're overthinking it, but if you imagine that in 2 years, 80% of all web traffic will be video, the explosion of video requires a more sophisticated understanding of how do you present the right video content to the right person at the right moment. And to do so effectively, you really want to understand what engages and resonates. So we think more deeply about that emotional connection, and our algorithms are actually informed by a number of inputs, including these motivations and the way in which we might anticipate what a person needs based on what they're doing. Now, when you look at that at a personal level, with personalization technology that we've developed, you can create a very, highly curated playlist, let's call it, across a variety of environments, websites, let's say, where a person's experience is continually enhanced by the video content that's being presented. But then you can blow that out to a much larger perspective and look at how might this lead to more systemic effects. And those effects might be that people are seeing video content that looks a lot more like them, or kids might see examples of entrepreneurs or technologists that might be female. It can have counter stereotypical effects. It can actually help inspire by creating that identification with, let's call it, role models in the content. And we think about those things quite deeply, because we care about not just promoting content that's trending or that got the highest bid, which is where a lot of content recommendations companies are hovering. We actually think about what's going to create long-term sustainable value for the user, for the publisher and content creator, and overall, what will create an enhanced user experience that brings people back again. So we think about this quite a bit, actually, and impact is really at the core of what we do. And every decision we make, we think first, solve for impact. And that impact can mean a lot of things. But for us, there is most certainly a core that really deals with this overall positive social impact.
I definitely think in general, if you don't dream big, you're never going to do something big, right? So oftentimes, I really believe that you have to think big, but start small. And particularly because we're in the entertainment space, what small means is really at the personal level. I think all of us can agree in some ways we're in the emotional transportation business, and I'm sitting there trying to create something that connects to you on an emotional level. And for us, starting small and personal could look very different. I know oftentimes people say, "How you're gaming? Like, what do games do?" And I could definitely pull out a whole litany. Jessica can pull out even more about how games can change people's lives for the better, and how people are learning all these skill sets. But on a very personal note, actually, my husband was playing one of our games, and he wasn't what he would call himself a gamer. And one day he came up to me and he's like, "Wow, Holly, you guys are doing something very important." And I'm like, "Well, yes, of course." And he's like, there's this woman in my alliance. Yes, we have alliance base and guilds and all the fun geeky stuff. And she suffers from this condition called sarcoidosis. I kid you not. And apparently it was a very kind of painful condition. And this was the only outlet that she had, only type of community connection. And she told her alliance how much that she emotionally depended on them in terms of a personal type of connection. And those are many, many stories that we have among our games. People get married, some get divorced, unfortunately. Lifelong friends are made. And that's really where I realize that's how we're impacting the whole world, is we start with one personal connection at a time.
So I have a different type of question about the value, and Rachel alluded to making money here. Are you all making the kind of money that you want to? Were you, in your previous large company backgrounds, was that better, more secure? And what's really the difference, and what is your insight on this for the audience?
It's totally, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go
You
ahead.
go.
It's definitely less. So my prior role, I was running global strategic alliances at Google. And I'll just say that that was very comfortable. And I, of course, had a nice equity package. So I'd been there for 8 years. So I had done a lot of different things at Google. There's some sacrifice involved in being an entrepreneur. Now, of course, there's huge upside if you're successful. And that upside far outweighs anything you might get at a which is not to be underestimated. This is my 5th startup, if you include a venture that was within Google, and every one of them successfully exited. And I would say that feels great. So don't underestimate the power and potential if you're a founder or early team member of a startup. However, it's really hard to leave that big company environment. It's comfortable, especially places like Google, where they do everything they can to keep you there. It's been a big change, but I haven't looked back. I don't regret leaving, and I could not be happier doing what I'm doing, even though I'm working harder than I ever have.
I think that it's definitely rougher. There are things that you're used to, like, going out for dinners and doing this and doing that. And certainly, I never thought I'd be sharing an office with my colleague, where you've got to like run out and I'm on the phone and dealing with that. And, traveling, I just got back and was like on a 14-hour flight, with my knees up to my ears, because we're, not going to spend money on things that don't make sense, right? You have to be really frugal. And there's this sort of big company mentality of like, it's okay, it doesn't matter. But when you personally know your investors and they've worked tirelessly to bring you the capital, you really want to be careful with that and make sure you're not just throwing it away on something, but it really becomes value, until you get to that Google point where you can actually, live extravagantly and have the Google jet, perhaps. but it's definitely you live tightly, and it's like, you know. But I actually think it's a value learning too, that even if I were at some other big company, that, you know, there's a personal amount, like when I spend my own dollar on that, and I think it's a valuable way to, you know, to look at it.
Anything more on that, or?
I mean, I come from the nonprofit arena, so I'm like happy as a clam over here. You know, like, I mean, comparably, I mean, nonprofit is horrifying. I don't know if anyone's in the nonprofit. You know, other than the stories you hear about the people that advantage of their nonprofit position and really, you know, giving themselves a quite, you know, substantive salary, you know, nonprofit you shouldn't have, you know, that's not what that's about. Those are philanthropic dollars. And so, you know, it's not, I'm sure compared to Google, it's very, you know what I mean? It's like nothing, but, you know, for me, it's, you know, it's better than nonprofit. Let's just put it that way.
It's true. So for me, I worked at AOL before founding the company as an individual contributor. So when I left and moved over, there was definitely some niceties that AOL offered, not Google-esque. And I will say, and I'll agree with Rachel, that when you adjust for risk, the best upside is being an entrepreneur and finding your own company if it becomes successful. And as you think about that, one of the things I do tell people is think about, you know, where you currently are, what the things that will change and what won't change. So for example, when I was at AOL, I was working just really long hours and even on the weekend. And I sat there and I thought, you know, I just don't think this is going to change about me. This is just, I built a community at work and I'm like, oh, this is just kind of what I do. And then I realized, like, I'm building all these products, which I love to build, but none of them are launching. And that would be nice because you can learn once you launch. That I realized, like, wow, you know, I'll just be doing kind of the same thing. Of course, I was very naive because I didn't know how painful certain things were. When you talk about divorce, you talk about all these things, there is an emotional toll that goes with it. But I was a bit naive. But I do think you should think about things that just won't change and what will give you the biggest upside. But now, since we're a larger company, we've definitely adjusted to market because we wouldn't be able to attract talent. So it's definitely come full circle for myself.
Knowing that the big companies have very few female executives, I think it's something like 3% in the M&E companies. Did you personally experience some sort of a barrier? Was there a choice, a conscious choice to become entrepreneurs? And upon leaving, did you also decide to be on boards too, or how did you, what it is that you were doing? Did you go back to those corporations for that type of mentorship?
So I was an individual contributor, so I definitely wasn't necessarily even close to the executive level at AOL. There's just so many layers in between. Like I said, the main reason why I left was I loved creating product and I wanted to get that interaction out. So maybe, Rachel, you might have a little bit more to say about it. Being at Google for 8 years, you're probably a little bit
I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
I actually have seen a lot. And I answer to give. I have seen things that affected me personally and also those around me. I think companies have an awareness and are getting better. So the diversity reports is a great step in the right direction. Also, you know, Google is one of the few tech companies that actually has tried, maybe more so even recently, to expand diversity at the upper echelon of power. When I joined, I was actually hired by Sheryl Sandberg, and my first team was Larry, Sergey, Eric, and Sheryl. And we were building this venture within Google. So I had a lot of proximity, and that was amazing, particularly at my age. And I think, you know, as companies mature, there's this expectation that they need to hire gray hair, which I had heard a couple times. So I did see some of the ventures that I led get sort of
Adult supervision. That's what it's called.
Yeah, actually it is. But anyway, I think separately, The board memberships that I've been part of have been hugely helpful. So I'm on 4 boards right now. And I think that getting the practice of being on a board and understanding what makes good board governance and understanding how to run an effective board meeting is not necessarily the kind of practice that you want to learn while you're also learning how to run a company, especially if it's your first time, or learning about the sort of complexities of the market. So if the earlier you can get on boards, I would do it, because it's actually really interesting. And you can be a nonprofit board or a private company board or even a public board. But I would say that women should just get out there and get that experience, because it's always going to be valuable. And it's sort of like, how many things do you want to learn on the job while you're also running a company? It's great to have that kind of under belt, so you have the muscle memory for when you need it. And then in terms of the people that I've attracted, I have a great advisory board I'm very happy with, but only one person, actually, okay, 2 people on the advisory board were in any way related to my Google experience. The rest actually came from my own personal network, and there were people who were mentors to me or who had phenomenal experience that was relevant to what we were doing. So people like Geraldine Laybourne, who's the chairman of Viacom, she's on my board. Well, she started out on my advisory board and as an investor. And then other folks who represent sort of different aspects of industry that are really valuable, and what I call bench strength, so wisdom around the table to help us make hard decisions.
I mean, I can't really speak to the transition, obviously, from going from a company to a startup or entrepreneurial venture, but in terms of the transition from kind of nonprofit to for-profit, the unique thing, I think that is just now taking hold in terms of perception, is that people used to think if you wanted to do good in the world, you know what I mean, like you sucked it up and you had your nonprofit venture. But I think that that's changing, and now the federal government gives grants called SBIRs, which are all for businesses. And I think there's a kind of a growing movement that, in fact, you can really have meaningful, and like the double bottom line company, like you can have meaningful social change and you can make money. And so, what I'm doing now at Adaptive Health Systems, this is a new company. It's actually been heavily funded for years by the government with SBIR grants. I think they have something like $32 million, which is like unprecedented that they've won all of those. Wait, I need to clarify. So the research and development hub that this new company is a spin-off of to actually scale the games, that's who won $32 million of SBIR grants. Company now has been formed to literally take that IP, to take those games and scale them out. So we do not have $32 million. But anyway, and so I think it's really exciting to think about, okay, so, my role right now is impact officer. Like, I actually believe I can make more of an impact in a for-profit company than I ever could if I had the same gains in a nonprofit, because you're really just as good as you're as good as your last grant. Like, when that grant runs out, your impact stops. Whereas if you have a good financial model at a for-profit, like, you can continue to impact. So that's, I think, exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think less of it as like female, non-female, or it's just, I heard someone on a panel and he was saying, like, you're not a female entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, right? So I think putting that caveat, you make business decisions based on, your own personal decision. And I genuinely believe that, you find the best people that are supportive and just be kind to other people, and, women, I think it's incumbent upon us to support other females. And I'll tell you, throughout my career, there've been a lot of bitches, and they're often worse than men. Like, there's certainly, the group of guys, but I think more importantly, it's other women having the responsibility of being kind to other people and mentoring. And I personally have through the class that I teach at Cal State Northridge and, other types of events, look for amazing young women and, help give them the encouragement so that they then also pay it forward, but it's not trying to hit a box or hit a number or a certain, statistic, but it's just being kind.
Just very briefly, did you personally have more male mentors than female mentors?
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
No.
No,
It's different for everybody.
yeah, I mean, the women that I really, and I'll even say, her name, Connie Yowell, who runs the MacArthur Foundation. Bill Gates gets all the play. He gets all the airtime. Like when people think education, Gates. MacArthur is run by a woman named Connie Yowell, who is unbelievable. I mean, in terms of her business acumen, her vision, her leadership, and that she, she's had a very big, I think, impact on me as a female role model in the education space. And I don't know, she stays kind of low pro, but I'm always, I feel like saying, Connie, you gotta, we need more attention focused on you. So we really can kind of increase the visibility of really meaningful women in the space.
Philanthropy especially.
Yeah, especially in philanthropy.
Well, Judy Roden, who runs Rockefeller now, or has for the last several years, is also.
So was that a yes on the end too, or no?
I've actually had more male mentors than female. I just think it goes back to your 3% comment that there's actually more gray hairs who are male, I'd say. And in some ways, the numbers kind of don't lie. That there's just, as much as we like to think of ourselves as X, Y, geek first or that first, the rest of the world does. The numbers show that something's kind of wrong. Why are we only getting paid 78 cents to the dollar still? Yeah, still. Don't worry. Don't ask for a raise. It'll come.
Karma.
No, it's karma. I'm sure
right.
that's how he's going to negotiate his package.
It'll come.
Yeah.
And I should add, it's not a bad thing to have male mentors. It's awesome
Yeah.
that anyone takes the time and belief in you. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
I would also just assert that sometimes we think of mentors as this sort of, you have a senior person and it's a one-to-one relationship and generally they're much older. I'm a huge advocate of peer mentors. And so I was the founder of a group at Stanford Business School called Women in Management. And we form these groups where you're actually mentoring each other and you're in the same age cohort. My WIM group has been meeting every month for 10 years. And it's amazing how powerful that shared knowledge is, even in your own age group. So don't reduce yourself to this image of, I have to go find a mentor. Ideally, it's a woman, and then you're dealing with impossible odds because everyone's busy as well. So actually think about, and of course, Sheryl Sandberg refers to, her lean in circles too. Whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter. But have a professional peer group that you can form at any age and make it a commitment, and you will be shocked by the amount of learning and growth and support that you get from that experience. It has been absolutely fundamental to my life.
That's a great point.
Is there any sort of innovation or just disruptive technology besides your own that you have seen recently that is very compelling to you right now?
Uber.
I mean, I think the facial recognition technology is really interesting. In my domain, we are really we're like at the crest of the wave that is just kind of building up in terms of actually, having an evidence base for kids that, all kids, but then kids that struggle with social skills. Like the idea of a technology that can help with interpersonal skills. It's people question it, yet, there's an evidence base for this. But I think it's really interesting when you think about adding on top of that, and that big R&D hub that I made reference to earlier just got another grant from the Department of Ed around integrating facial technology into our tools. And so that opens up a whole new world of, I think, possibility. And it's almost surreal when you think about technology having the ability to to do that. But it's exciting.
Yeah, we're excited about moving sort of fMRI to the more portable EEG devices that allow you to understand and detect sort of signals that can then be used to drive new experiences. So there's a lot of companies that are doing really important work to understand neural signals and how it transmits information about what people want to do. So games are created, of course. I mean, we know of several that I don't need to mention right now that are based on this. But I also think about emotional connection and emotional resonance, and how do we think about not just mapping the terrain of the brain, but actually how do we think about emotional response and helping create positive experiences? I mean, positive is a huge aspect of what we do because we think that there needs to be something of a counterbalancing force out there around the effects that content can have. And I also think about this exciting area around wearables and how technology is now literally pervasive and everywhere. It's a fascinating space right now, and everything is converging at hyperspeed.
You know, can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I thought there is one technology that I saw, and it was one company bought them, but they're robots. And, you know, when I look at a lot of technologies, it's always like here, you know, because that's what we all use and it's sort of what changes things. But there's one company back east that has robots that look completely human. And with that kind of technology, you can create armies, you can create a number of different things. And that to me is a super wild technology. And you think of like in the future, you know, what does that create?
Drones for me. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's funny because when it first came out, I was like, oh man, maybe I should get one and follow my toddler around. But I think it's actually going to be, it's disrupting how war is being done. Like who negotiates with a drone? It's disrupting how we even follow wildlife. There's a really specific type of rhinoceros that's endangered, so they have these drones kind of following it around. It's definitely less invasive than attacking the person tagging. And I cannot wait for a drone to just be part of transportation, right? Like just pick me up and take me somewhere. It's going to be like WALL-E. We're all going to be fat. I mean, you can also deliver food into hard to reach places. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, these drones are pretty amazing. They take the place, unfortunately, of cameramen at football and sporting events. But I think drones can really be super useful and really change.
I wonder if they'll unionize.
Maybe
like drone teamsters,
like the
like
robot type thing. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, like somebody's like, how do you negotiate with a drone when it's pointing a handgun at you? And you know who's behind those is people who know how to play with the game controllers. So become a gamer.
Yeah.
Gaming is not bad.
Yeah, I just heard they printed a car.
The 3D
Yeah.
3D
printing.
3D printed
Wow.
a car.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's
So-
another great technology.
So yeah, I'm sure that Uber will be using those cars soon, right? As far as the entertainment aspects of the technology, in the motion pictures, TV, music, sports, fashion, lifestyles, live performance, or video games, where do you see the biggest opportunities coming for you?
I'll take that. I mean, we've got a lot of different areas that actually everything you mentioned, our company hits on. I think, you know, for us, we've got a couple of technologies that we'll be integrating in the next month that will allow people to connect and see themselves and engage with other people in ways that I don't think has happened yet, you know, so it's very exciting for us. In terms of, you know, the content, it's so much more personal now, you know, and it's so much more democratic that you can't just, like, kids don't really care so much about, you know, huge celebrities, you know, it's more about their own people that they've created and Vine stars that I personally wouldn't know, but I love the democratization of that, you know, and I think technologies and what I hope that some of, you know, ours will continue to do is allow for that and for people to, you know, create their own fans and their own celebrities and excitement for them.
You know, I'm gonna call out two areas that you didn't mention. One is parenting. Well, parenting and education. I think that right now, we really are still, unfortunately, we're struggling, we're trying, but it's still broken. We're still teaching kids like we're an industrialized society, and it's no longer actually about content knowledge. Like, kids can Google whatever they want. Like, it's not about teaching content. It's really about a more kind of robust and layered set of skills that really ultimately is about people, right? It's about, how can I build empathy for other people? How can I connect with other people? How can I take your perspective? Even in terms of like design and tech, it's so critical now that a whole new set of skills, both the what and the how we're teaching, shifts. So, I'm excited that we're really a forerunner in both areas, the what of what we're teaching and the how, which is games. And then I think parenting, we have dual versions for our games at my new company. And I think that, we have parents that we can say, and I'm not a parent, and so I don't want to say this from a pedantic standpoint at all, but even I suffer from this, is that, we want children to learn this rich set of skills, yet we're looking at our phones, checking messages while we're talking to our children. So it's like the idea of role modeling for parents and kind of giving parents really just light touch messages, but really important messages that say, okay, how can we connect better, and how can you connect better? And I think those things, have such potential for I think you mentioned this idea of kindness. You know what I mean? These small things can change lives. So I'm excited about both those areas.
I agree. I think the personal experience is what's going to be really valuable, and irrespective of the type of content, because I think that's becoming less and less important. It's more about understanding, in the moment or in the context, and redefining even what we mean by context. How can we support, and this is my goal, is how can we support an individual's trajectory, whatever that might be, whether they want to be entertained, whether they want to learn, whether they want to build a new career in a new area, whether they want to learn how to do something, even if it's as simple as creating something from a recipe, or something as complex as how to print a car using 3D printing. And so I think a lot about the learning trajectory, and also just the personal aspirations, and how can we think about all this universe of very rich content that's out there, and create a graceful, seamless, highly personalized experience on whatever device or platform they're using at the moment when it has the greatest impact.
So it's probably expected, but I truly believe that games is probably one of the largest opportunities, not just from, if you look at kind of revenue on a platform, games by far always exceed all other types of applications in terms of monetization. And I do believe, because at the heart of it, it speaks to play. And just kind of how we are as human beings, we like either challenge or achievement or interaction or something in there that's just either you're learning, because that's how children learn, is through play. And then I think that there's just been this huge divide between here's games and then here's everything else. But in reality, I see the biggest opportunity of those two merging. You've heard of gamification, and I really hate that, because it's just, to me, like lipstick on a pig. But really, like the games, what we think about is really creating these daily habits, right, of, entertainment and challenge. And as we can bake that through other products, I mean, you get it through wearables, you get it through your inbox. Like, okay, can I get that down to 0? I know you guys are all thinking that. Well, some of you, I know some OCD folks are, let's get it down to 0. And I think that there's just huge opportunities to keep on hammering down that divide within that gaming space. And there's just so much more. I haven't even talked about game controllers as well. And well, I just talked about drones, and how in the future it's probably going to be people who are really good at working those controllers who are going to be controlling the drones. It's always it's the same people who are doing heart surgery as well. Mm-hmm. It's now these tiny instruments and learning this manual manipulation. So I think the opportunity is still super huge. New platforms keep coming out, wearables, drones, Oculus Rift, virtual reality. Soon we won't have to go into like commercial living space. I just have to like put on my headset and say, hi, I'm at work, guys. I mean, that's just going to be crazy, but it might be something in the future. So I really think that to me is still one of the largest opportunities.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to take questions if anyone has questions for the panel.
You guys talked about some of the different things that are the different disruptions that you had. This is maybe a little bit more basic, but in terms of you guys are all starting your own companies or with partners starting companies. And like for us, like we started an agency a little while ago, and Dropbox was incredibly huge for us because it made everything mobile. So that for me, but I mean, I realized that that's probably like 5 years ago. For you guys, what are some of the tools that you're able to use that makes things a little bit easier for starting a business now, especially for parents?
We use Dropbox. It's very important.
I'm just wondering if there's anything else, you know, like what's the new Dropbox or something like that that continues.
So just for the broadcast,
Yeah.
what are the new technologies that you're using to enable your business?
I would say Google Hangout. You know, I co-created a Google Hangout actually with two, a nonprofit and a for-profit, a nonprofit called Great Schools, which I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but they're a massive nonprofit that helps parents pick their kids' schools, and a social media mommy blogger company called Social Moms. And so we're doing a Google Hangout around social emotional learning every 2 months and we bring, you know, we bring together leaders from the field and leaders from outside the field to talk to each other and just have these like interesting dialogues. Like we did the Lifetime Super Nanny, and we had her talk with this leader from Yale. And it's for parents, and it goes out to parents, and we get, you know, really, really wide distribution. But here we are leveraging a new technology to build awareness ultimately. And I was just on one from Ashoka that was all around educational technology, that I was part of their featured, you know, panel. But that, I would say that has most, you know, been a really interesting tool to kind of push the work forward that we're doing.
When we were smaller, and we still use it now, Google Docs. That is one of the best way to
100%.
collaborate. Yeah, we're still at 800 people, and we still use it.
Yeah.
And I know the IT department's like, the security's all terrible, but it's so I haven't I've seen it less kludgy. It's a very elegant solution. Google, I guess, owns everything now.
I know,
It's Dropbox. It's Drive. Sometimes we use Drive.
So yes to all of these. And then actually what we've been using to do project management, which has been great, is Asana. And then we also use, it's been really helpful because I'm just trying to get everyone out of email. Like better ways to plan. And the other thing we use for rapid prototyping is Lean Canvas, because it helps you do really quick market product fit tests. So that's been helpful for us too.
Okay, another question? No questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. As someone who, in essence, grew up in the 70s and did a lot of political, social consciousness raising about women, I want to say thank you to all.
Oh, that's so nice.
Really sweet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very kind.
So I have.
Oh, there's a.
Oh, yay!
I think you're wanting or trying to internally hope that there will be more questions. So here's another. If you could pick one thing that was very challenging, that you had to jump over that hoop, you had to push yourself, you had to do something, or else you couldn't get forward or continue to the next stage. What would it be? An issue, a person, a thing, not awareness of certain things? What would that be?
Mine's very salient right now because we just lived through it. I think it was harder than I expected to raise VC money. The challenge that we had as an all-female tech team surprised me. Actually, we're very happy with where we ended up and with whom. And in fact, I feel like in some ways, maybe it was a rite of passage to understand what it's really like out there, because I had never had this much trouble raising capital. And it was a better idea. It was a better team. There were just factors about it that made it logically not make sense. And now with a little bit of retrospect, I can look at it and say, okay, like there's a reason I needed to do this and that it had to be hard. But I just think it's, we're in a time right now where it really is hyper competitive to be a tech startup. And the pipeline issue is real. Like there aren't enough female entrepreneurs cultivated. And while there's all these great incubators and everything else out there, the proportion that is female is still not great. And then, the other issue is that once you're in the door and you've got your institutional financing, it's sort of like a lot of other paths open up for you, and women are still lagging behind because they don't get that kind of institutional support. Women probably on average are managing with 1/10 the capital of their male counterparts, easily.
Do you think it's because you had a hard time because it was an all-female team?
Yeah.
So you got branded
Precisely.
as these are the female entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think it was
an entrepreneur
precisely
raising
because,
money.
Yeah, I mean, we had patents. It was just from a logical standpoint. It was really a challenge that we did have to overcome. It was critical for the company. We learned a lot in the process. I feel great about where we are, and it was excruciating.
I would say that's a really interesting question, and I'll give a really, brutally kind of honest and vulnerable answer. For me, it was acting as if. When the decision was made to eliminate me as a co-founder, since there's been 2 co-founders eliminated, which is crazy. But when that decision was made, it was a shock to me, and it was a shock to the community, because I had a very external role. So I was like at conferences everywhere. I was the one interviewed for articles everywhere. And so it was I was like, I literally truly felt like the rug got pulled out from under me. And the next 3 months, I just made a commitment to myself. Like all I wanted to do was like literally crawl into the corner and like hide. And I was like, you know what? My job is external. I'm a partnership builder. I care about this space. I care about what I do. And that means that I'm just going to have to stand up straight and speak at every single conference that I'm still supposed to speak at. Like I was still supposed to speak at a whole bunch of different conferences representing that company. And I was like, well, I will go and I will speak. And you know what I mean? And of course I kind of wanted my stomach felt terrible and I felt like, you know what I mean? But I just, there was a huge convening at Harvard with all these brilliant researchers around this, round table. And I was like, I will still go to that and I will still represent this space and innovative technologies in this space. And, it really was, for me, it was acting as if, because I didn't feel like I was on par with everyone there because of what had just happened. Yeah. But I just had to say, you know what, like nobody's thinking that, that's your head. And so, but that was really meaningful. That was a really meaningful and really challenging skill.
I think there are always those challenges. And I think for me, it's just been more personal disappointment in people that I thought were different and handled things differently. And it's, in some ways felt like a kick in the gut. And it's, for me, just trying to remove from that and just being resilient and going through and approaching, because sometimes you can start trying to analyze in this issue and that issue, but at the end of the day, it's like, what do you want the outcome to be? Focus on that, which is, I think, what you guys are all saying as well. And I think it's acting as if, right? Because any kind of challenge or if you identify too much with your role and your job or your money or your car, something's going to happen where you're going to get kicked in the gut. So as much as you can, remove yourself. And always, someone said to me something that I thought was really very cool is that this guy cut me off and I was so mad, and he was like, you know what? You don't know what anyone else is going through. His wife could have left him today. It could seem all fine, but you never know what's going on in someone else's life. And I think keeping that in mind too is always helpful.
Oh, I guess for me, in the past and even currently is kind of similar into it, Ken, is just owning it. Having confidence. I know that's probably something that we talk about as women a lot. And for me, there's two things. One, I'm the only female co-founder of a male team in a heavily male-dominated space. So that's been actually particularly very challenging for me to kind of just own it, as well as, you know, speaking up. I'm Asian and I'm female as well. So there's a lot of things that I have to balance in terms of biases. And so that's one place where I have to continually push myself, and my executive team is all male as well. So trying to work on that. And then the second thing is how this kind of played out is, even though my background's been product design, the CEO tapped me to run HR. And HR is a very specialized field in corporate services, and trying to ramp up, and just like my coach was telling me, you just own it, Holly. You are the person. And I think sometimes you just wake up and say, I am the person, I am the woman. You are it. You are it. Nobody else can be you. So that's really kind of where I think we all should be.
You're living the life, Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, that actually, just piggybacking on that, like, there is something to be said for our uniqueness. You know, like, you know, because I'm in education, I'm usually with all these PhDs, and, you know, I graduated, you know, from a phenomenal college, but I don't have a PhD. And so, you know, it's really owning, well, but I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody's an entrepreneur in the education space. So I bring something very unique to the table. And just remembering, like, my uniqueness is an asset. It's not like I'm different, so I'm less than. And that's really important as well.
Dr. Seuss says, no one else can be youer than you.
And who's more right than Dr. Seuss?
Exactly.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Digital Hollywood. Thank you, the audience, for attending today.